All right. Happy Friday, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Learning Tech Talks, where we are exploring the landscape of learning technology while cutting through the fluff to answer the questions you need answered to make the right decision when building your digital learning ecosystem. So today, and I'm going to try and get the names right again. I know we just talked about this, but I'm joined by Stefan Pinu and Peter Olyarchuk. I think I got it, from Training Orchestra.
Good morning.
And we're talking about improving operational efficiency of instructor-led training. So excited to talk about this. We've had a good chance to get started and just prime the pump a little bit before we got here. But before we get into that, the question that you've been preparing and I don't have the answer to yet that I'm very much looking forward to is, what is something outside of work that is occupying your time or that you've been doing recently? So let's start with you, Stefan. What's yours?
Yeah, it's only 2 years and a half, and thanks a lot, Christopher, for the invitation today. Yeah. It's only 2 years and a half that I'm here in Florida, so I really enjoy to discover. The nature is very strong here. Alligators, sharks, everything it's very impressive. I didn't have that in Paris. I can absolutely confirm. The biggest animal I had there was maybe a rabbit. It was the biggest that you have in France. So here. It's very interesting. So I really enjoy discovering every morning when I wake up too. I'm so happy to see palm trees and so really great place to be, and I enjoy being here.
Okay. Any animals crept into your personal space as of yet? Any of these alligators or any of the big animals?
Yes. There were manatees in the canal recently, very big manatees. So yeah, I don't know if my cat enjoyed or not that, but there is this wildlife that I really like.
Okay, your cat didn't go missing or anything like that.
No. I know that Peter would do sausages with all those animals, but
okay. All right. How about you, Peter? What's occupying your time outside of work?
Well, in addition to making sausage, the new thing I was doing, so going back many years ago before children, I'd always wanted to play the guitar. I played the piano and a clarinet when I was younger, but I wanted to play the guitar. So I bought a guitar a long time ago and I took lessons and I played a little bit. But then now since once our kids were born, for some reason, I just stopped playing. So my acoustic guitar just sat on the side and got dirty and grimy. My electric guitar did the same. And then I just got inspired over the holidays. And so took them out, cleaned them all up, and just started playing again. And it's trying to get the calluses back on my fingers, trying to stretch so I can play bar chords again. But it's been exciting. It's been like a lot of fun to do that. And I kind of wish I'd never stopped many years ago. So that's my latest little thing.
All right. So
are you keep it.
What's that?
That we don't ask you to play. We don't ask you to play now. Christopher is not taking this risk.
That's the rest of the show. I forgot to tell you on the green room that now you're going to be asked to serenade us.
Okay, I'm going. I'm leaving.
Steven's out. Yeah. Well, so, and for those of you watching, I'd love to hear, what are you up to now? What's something you're doing outside of work? So comment in. Like, share the show, get this out to the network. For me, right, I have 5 kids, 8 and under. That's pretty much whatever I do outside of work. But recently, my wife and I actually we're shiplapping the ceiling in our kitchen and dining room. So if you don't know what that is, Google shiplap. Pretty cool, looks nice. Honestly, it was a lot easier than patching the drywall where we filled in the ceiling. You're just able to go right over the top. So all that said, completely unrelated to learning tech. Now, right, 4 minutes in, we can transition into the real good stuff. And improving the operational efficiency of instructor-led. And I think one of the important things that we talked about before we went live, but it's an important discussion to have, is when we talk about instructor-led, what we mean by that. And so I'll pass it over to you, Stefan, to just kind of reiterate what you'd shared with me about why so much passion and why so much energy about instructor-led.
Yes, so that's a very important question, because the instructor-led is still here, and it's growing again. So maybe just to define what we put behind instructor-led training, or ILT, it's when there is a facilitator. And what is great with it could be live, it could be face to face, or it could be remote, but you can interact with the instructor and or the facilitator. This facilitator will guide you, will help you, because what is important is to improve your skills. That's why the return on investment of instructor-led training, be it classroom or in a virtual classroom, is 2.5 times higher than a return on investment than an e-learning course. E-learning is great, but it's more engaging when you have an instructor, and that's what we call instructor-led training. Still 70% of the training investment. If you do a comparison, on the Earth you have 70% of water when you see from space, and only 30% of land. That's the same. So we say it's the blue Earth when we see from far. That's exactly the same for instructor-led training. 70% of instructor-led training and growing.
Yeah, and that's one of the questions I followed up with was, a trend you're seeing is, are you seeing, because there are some circles where, instructor-led's going away and it's disappearing, and that's not the trend that you're seeing right now. If anything, what you said is you're actually seeing it start to kind of gain some momentum back. Is that accurate?
Absolutely. So as a trend, we see that for 2 years, so according to Brandon Hall or Burson, it's growing again. So instructor-led training is growing again. And we see that ILT is very dominant in a tech company like Google, Facebook. They do something like 95% of instructor-led training. And for new generation, just arriving in the company, they ask for more instructor-led training because they want to ask questions, they want to interact, they want maybe to disagree, but that's the way we learn. It's not something like linear, it's something where we can really interact. And we all remember our teacher when we were young. You don't have the same interaction with a computer than the teacher. So it's working very well, and yes, the trend is growing, and we're a very US and North American focus when we give those figures, because in Europe it's more than 95%. In China, it's more than 98%. Russia, it's a big country too. It's more than 99%. So instructor-led training is still very dominant.
Okay. Well, and I think what we had talked about, and this is where, sometimes it's a hot button topic, right? You get your digital people, you get your instructor-led people, and it creates a little bit of tension between the two, where really it's not so much and Peter, this is what we were talking about, is the fact it's not a this or that, it's a this and that. And it's about finding that right balance of facilitating, right, where there is that dynamic nature, that synchronous nature of collaboration and interaction to drive things forward while blending it, with other things. And Pierre, I think it was great your story about the fact that this isn't new stuff, right?
No, it's just exactly as back in college days. You had the syllabus that told you what chapters in the textbook to read, and then you went into the lecture, so you'd have all the the understanding of the materials, and then you finish it up with your reinforcement afterwards with studying for your exam. So it's the whole blended learning approach where you get the best of both worlds, and now it's just done electronically instead of a textbook.
Yeah. Well, so let's talk about because we're introducing a new acronym, right? We're introducing the TRMS, which is now another acronym to add to the ever-growing list of acronyms to learning and development. So can you define what a TRMS is for me and for everyone else? And then also just really what is the main focus? What problem is it set out to solve for the learning industry?
Yes, so that's a very important question. So what we put behind TRMS is a training resource management system. So a system designed to manage training resources. So when we talk about training resources, we talk about the instructors, the rooms, any equipment or material that you would need to organize the classes, the session. And the mission of a training resource management system is to make the most of your resource. Optimize the way you use the resource. What's the resource used? your instructors? Do you do you use them 95% of their time or 60% of their time? And when you go to a corporate, usually they say, wait a minute, let me show you with my Excel spreadsheet what's the result, and it will take 1 hour to have 3 information, and so it's not fully optimized. So what we see is usually the client will have the best learning management system. And we can name Saba, Workday Learning, Sum Total System, Docebo. So they will have the best learning management system, and sometimes the best learning engagement platform that they sit on top of the LMS, but they will manage, even if they have invested so much money in those great technology, they will manage manually in Excel spreadsheet and Outlook 70% of their training investment. So you have 30% managed with the best technology in the world and 70% managed manually, and it's not optimized. And when you have a very good instructor, it's important to make the most of this strategic resource. So because that's also a way to reduce the cost of instructor-led training. So what we put behind training resource management system is everything that you're doing today manually in Excel spreadsheet and Outlook, like scheduling the session, managing the trainers, tracking the cost, all those resource managements.
Yeah. Okay. It's funny. The thing you mentioned there that I think is, I laugh about it because it's true, because I've run these teams before, is you're right? We invest a lot in optimizing technology for kind of the front end of things, and we don't always make those same investments on the back end. Or the analogy, I've talked to some other back end products, we call it the plumbing in your house, right? It's the things that you don't necessarily see, but they're critical to the operations of your organization, and we don't necessarily put the same care into that. And we use Excel spreadsheets, or we use paper calendars to keep track of where things are. And that, if I'm summarizing it correctly, that's really where the TRMS comes into play in terms of managing those resources and organizing that. Correct?
Absolutely. It's really a scheduling system. So really the mission is to schedule the session, optimize the way you use the resource. So who's the best available trainer in Miami who speaks Spanish and who can train on this specific subject? And so it's finding the best available resource. Also trying to avoid them to travel too much. It can be also optimized, because if you want the best learner experience, even in ILT, you need to have the instructor, available to support, to help. If he's traveling all the time, he will be very tired. He's not going to be as good. So it's everything that you can do to optimize the way you use your resource. Track your budget, because it's very costly to organize instructor-led training. So it's also to optimize your training investment. So it's all those back-end capabilities. So usually when we represent the learning stack, we see on the top, on the front end, the learner engagement platform, and you have 5 learner engagement platform. In the middle, you have the learning management system, and you have 750 learning management system, and we sit on the back end, meaning that Training Orchestra connects only the scheduler, the team in charge of optimizing the resource, the instructors. So it's a back office system. We do not connect the learner, and we complement each other. That's really the 3 main component. So 5 learning experience platforms, 750 LMS, and 1 Training Orchestra. We don't have any competition, because it's not considered
now,
as
right. You just went live and told everybody you don't have competition.
Yes, absolutely. Welcome.
Now they're coming for you.
No, it's great, and we had this discussion, with the learning engagement platform. When Degrid was the only learning engagement platform, it was great. They always have to explain what is a learning engagement platform. Now they have more competitor, of course, but those competitors educate the market, and so it's a different story. So we will welcome any competition. We don't have from now, but we will welcome any competition, and they will educate the market, and that it will be great for us. We think that we will benefit from that.
Okay. So here on this, you mentioned something that brings up a question that Alexander he mentioned in the chat, and I'm going to ask it in a little bit of a different way, because what you talked about was, right, optimizing the use of your best resources to make the most of instructor-led training when you do it. And I think that's an important thing, because it's not about it shouldn't exist or it's not there. This is my take on it. It's not that it shouldn't exist. It's more so we should be using it to the best of our capability and using it when it makes the most sense and using it, as efficiently as possible. Does the system have a way to manage or track? You talked about make sure you're using the right resources in the right places. Does it have a way to track some of that, effectiveness measurement of like who these resources are, who are we using the most, so that you can start to get a better picture? Because I do think with instructor-led, one of the challenges is measuring effectiveness of it, because it's not as digital where we're capturing as much data on, well, what worked, what didn't. So I'm curious, how does Training Orchestra, or does it help with that challenge?
Yeah, that's very important, because choosing the best instructor is not an easy thing. Let's say that we have two very different situations. The first situation is, I would say, when an organization has full-time permanent instructors, and they can be very precise on their skills, their ability to train on some subject, if they have some certification, the language they speak, where they are based, and all those criteria have to be taken into consideration to find the best available resource. Because clearly, if it's happening in Florida, maybe you need someone who speaks Spanish. It would make sense. Who speaks Spanish. So it's part of the criteria. If it's happening in New York, maybe we don't need the exact same skills. So that's important when you choose. Okay. So you have those with full-time permanent instructor, and on the other end, you have companies with a lot of subject matter experts. We have this great use case with one of the largest consulting firm. Just in the US, they have more than 15,000 instructors. Wow. And those instructors, are subject matter expert. They have another job. They are consultants. And when they want to know if they are available, if they can train on a specific subject, what they can do, what's the exact level of expertise that they have. Okay, you can be proficient on tax, but you can train junior, expert. What is your level exactly? Well, they give a call, they send an email, and you can imagine when you have 15,000 instructors that it's going to be pretty complex to maintain the database. They have a turnover of more than 20%. Know who can do what, or who has the motivation to do what. Know what are the skills, who speak which language, what is the level exactly. So all this interaction can be organized. We call that the instructor engagement platform, so you can better engage your instructor, and that's part of what we do too.
Okay. So go ahead, Peter. Yeah.
Let's say one of the key things here, in addition to what Stefan's talking about, all of that, we retain all of that data. So instead of working on Excel spreadsheets where you're managing your instructors and you've got these spreadsheets all over the place, we have all the data consolidated, which allows you to then go ahead and evaluate those instructors. And talking about permanent full-time instructors, what are their utilization rates? And talking with companies that have large pools of instructors, we're seeing that their utilization rates around 55, 65% seems to be a consensus we're hearing. And we have clients that are specifically using Training Orchestra to have visibility, because that history is there through our reporting system, and then you have visibility over that, and then you can improve utilization rates to push them upwards to targets of 80, 85%. Which is a significant savings when you're talking about those resources, which can be quite costly.
Okay. So is anybody, because that is a challenge, I think it's a challenge, honestly, bigger than just instructors to some degree, because knowing where, as you said, subject matter experts may be in terms of who knows what language are they in, things like, do you have any customers that are using it maybe outside the box of just instructor-led training, just for managing some of those L&D resources to know who the talent is? And I only ask because just as my wheels are turning here, I'm even just thinking some of the use cases of potentially even organizing some of the L&D talent you may have, who has this skill in this, who can we pull into this project, who might we be able to get to develop this or that, because I can tell you that's a real challenge sometimes in terms of just finding those people, and a lot of waste goes into doing that. Is anybody doing that now?
Yes, absolutely. Finding the best available resource and managing, the repository of those resources is something that is very, very important, considering that they can have some other activities too. Even a full-time permanent instructor can, spend time to design courses or collect the needs. So maybe they are not available for another reason. And so we have to manage all the activities of the instructor. It's a very rare and strategic resource. And, if you want really the learner to learn, you have to find really the best resource. The best resource can be an internal resource, but it could be also an external resource. So managing also a list of external instructor, of course, it's more costly. And that's also why we track the cost, the budget, training investment, because you have to do part of the choice is, okay, maybe the best solution would be to have this amazing consultant joining us, but the cost is 5 times higher. So we can take that also into consideration. Does it worth it or not? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. So there are multiple criteria that can help choosing the best resource.
Okay. So like in that example that you just gave, which it's a valid use case, right? Where sometimes we're making decisions based on who we can find or who we may be most familiar with, instead of, hey, let's look at the data to see who is the best resource for the job, the most cost effective based on what we're trying to do, so that you can use your money more effectively versus just going off of what you may know.
Yeah, and most of the time, the corporate will have internally the best resource, because you don't have to brief an external consultant about what you do, what's so specific with your industry. You have someone internally that have the skills to do that, and who is up to speed, already knows the culture and everything about your company, but you have not detected that. So the system is also here to help you detect. That's why we call that also an instructor engagement platform, how to better engage the instructor, how to detect the instructor, how to invite them to maintain the skills that they have to train is an important part.
Okay. So with that, then organizations who are using this, because if you're, I don't know, a medium or large, maybe even small, you're probably tackling this where not all of your stuff is being done by internal resources. You are pulling, so you can blend external and internal resources into the system so that and have all those in one place versus having to keep your black book of external resources and then your internal Excel spreadsheet of internal resources, correct?
Yes, absolutely. It's correct. And you can interact in real time with both internal and external resources. So, yes, absolutely. And you were mentioning something important about small or big, So Jamaica Public Services, they have 300 employees. Okay. Of course, we have some clients with 1, 2, 3 million user learner, I should say, because we connect the back office. We do not connect the learner, but it works well for a very large organization, and we need to scale and really optimize. Track the relation that they have with all the subject matter experts, but also when you have a small organization, think about it. Those instructors, they are on the road all the time. How do you communicate with them? You give them a call, you send them email, they train all day long. Now, you can interact in real time with them, thanks to a portal. It's dedicated. They will see everything that they need, and you can really interact in real time with them. It's far more better than giving call. It's always great, but it's not efficient, even for a small organization.
So there's communication channels through the platform then as well, in terms of how everybody can interact. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay.
Pete, yes, you want to?
Yeah, go for it, Peter. If you had to add more to that.
Oh, no. I was just saying yes. I mean, through whether it be through the portal or through the traditional email and that type of
Okay, because I mean, it takes me back. I won't tell you how long, but a long time ago, to the days of I used to be a software trainer, and I used to travel around and I would implement big things, and there was a team of trainers, and it was an operational nightmare. keeping track of who was where, when were they there, were they available, were they not, what client are we working with, and do we have the right trainer who's going to be able to deal with this person, things like that. And it was, and the days of Excel spreadsheets and pieces of paper still haunt me.
yeah, and it was do you know what have been the first software developed by Bill Gates? Do you know? It's a scheduling system. Okay. He was still a kid, and his school came to us, and we say, well, we have all those teachers, all those rooms, and you want a teacher to do 2 hours, then stop 3 hours, then do 1 hour, then stop 3 hours. It has to be optimized. It's making the most of the best resources, and it has been the first software that has been developed by Bill Gates. So it's not an issue that we just have today. It's here for a long time, and it was interesting to see that it has been the first product of Bill Gates.
Okay.
So even him is very familiar with the subject.
Okay. So going back to the client base then, the people who, you mentioned, right, different sizes of organizations, but this isn't just, your target market isn't necessarily just big, I think, training shops, right, where they've got massive organizations, where they've got tons of people, and they're doing that. It's also for maybe a smaller organization that has these resources that they're trying to make the most of, because maybe they don't have big budgets and big headcount to be managing all of that stuff. Is that accurate?
Absolutely. Big or small, that's the same issue. Making the most, tracking your budget, and at a point of time, to be transparent, you can always do it with an Excel spreadsheet. Let's say that you have 2, 3 trainers, 4 trainers, you organize 200, 250 classes per year. It means 5 per week. You can always do that with Excel spreadsheet, but if your instructors start to travel a lot, and when you're growing, it becomes more and more difficult, and it creates silo. And it's not optimized, and you never know in real time what's happening. Maybe someone is calling sick, so he says that in the instructor portal, you know it, and you can book someone else, instead of losing a lot of time. So yes, it could be for any kind of company. Acceptable when you're very small, but the bigger you are, the more complex it is.
Okay. It's not just the size, but it's also the different, whether it be an L&D department or a client that's training their clients, dealers, and distributors, company training their clients, dealers, and distributors, extended enterprise, or an association. And we have an association client that joined us recently, and they were very excited to start using Training Orchestra to get some control over their training operation. And when they described how they managed their training in the old way, it was a whiteboard, Post-it notes, and a box of tissues. So, it caused a lot of stress and a lot of tears. So.
Yeah. Well, and honestly, I think I've got a lot of friends outside L&D, and I would say a lot of other industries or a lot of other fields would not even blink at the resource management is an important thing to focus on. I think other places would say, well, of course it is. And they spend a lot of time and invest a lot into optimizing those resources. And I don't think we've necessarily always thought about it that way. And honestly, the other thing that comes to mind is, going back to the day, I guess, is thinking about that utilization piece was a question I was asked all the time when I was trying to justify resources or saying, hey, we have a surge, we're going to have this many new clients, and we're going to need, and it was always a question of, well, how are you utilizing the resources you are now? Are they this much optimized? Are we having this many people available? And it was difficult. I had to pull my whiteboard and spreadsheet together to try and tabulate it. And it was a lot of my time spent figuring that out. So where were you? Where were you 10, 15 years ago, guys? So
that's you know what, Christopher? Most of the time, we see the people asking for this question. They see our product, they laugh, and they say, "How come we don't know you?" So that's the education of the market has been done by the LMS. And what has been said till now is that instructor-led training is not anymore. There is not anymore instructor-led training. It doesn't work well. They give a little bit of a caricature of, a boring PowerPoint and someone 8 hours in front of a boring PowerPoint. You have boring instructor-led training, boring e-learning courses. You have boring everything, and so it's not. Being boring is not, linked to instructor-led training. It can be learning can be boring sometimes, but if it's a bad job. So, market has been educated by marketing people from learning management system, and so the reality is a little bit different. E-learning is very important. It works well. But instructor-led training is still here and working far more better. According to Brandon Hall Group, it's the return on investment is 2.5 times higher with an instructor-led training. When you invest 100 in e-learning, you get 2.5 times higher return on investment with an instructor-led training courses. So it's a very big impact, So we have to take into consideration the reality. Instructor-led training is here, and people are interested to discover what we do. We were only in Europe a few years ago, and now we're growing very fast here in North America.
Okay. Well, I will tell you, I always get skeptical when people start throwing out the metrics because I'm like, some of those studies make me nervous. But on that note, right, the reality is it is an important part, and that gets back to regardless of the stats or what research paper is out there, is the fact that it does play an important role, and that as the digital guy, I can even say it has an important role, and I think. I made a post about this, I don't know, it was a while ago, and it got a ton of interactions, some very angry, some not. But the fact that what you said earlier is instructor-led it's a tool. It's not good or bad. It's simply a tool, just like e-learning in and of itself is not good or bad. It can be both, quite honestly, depending on what you do with it. And so I feel like sometimes the effort that goes into arguing about which one's better or which one's superior is, why don't we just focus on getting better at all of it? And that's where I see your platform playing a role in that, to saying, look, instructor-led isn't going away. Let's optimize the efficiency of it so that we can make the most of it. And then use, I think the term from your website is do more with less, or better with less. It's not necessarily just more with less. You might say we don't need to do more instructor-led training. You might say we need to do the same, but we need to do it better so we have resources to invest in something else that's going to push us forward. That was a bit of a learning rant, so I apologize for that one. But it gets me a little feisty when I start hearing people get into the debate of, this is good, this is bad. It's like, there's good and bad on both.
It's a tool. No, you say it. Yeah.
I think overall, both instructor-led, the instructional designers and the techniques and all that they're putting into both instructor-led content and e-learning content, I think are both making great strides in keeping the learner engaged, whichever modality. So I think we're getting better. We're making learning more fun. So we don't have all the boring learning Stefan was talking about a minute ago. So I think everything's going in the right direction, right? So the industry can be proud of where they're going, okay? And we just know on the ILT side we have to be more cost effective,
right? Because the reality is, from a cost standpoint, it does tend to be more expensive. Not tend to, it's more expensive. You've got travel, you're actually dealing with people. So the efficiency optimization of it is crucial. So let me steer this a little bit in a different direction, because again, I think we all agree, whether you're an instructor-led or an e-learning designer, nobody is out there saying the right way to do learning is to clockwork orange people's eyes and force them through content, period. Like, nobody's saying that. So we can just put that to rest. But with that, I want to talk about, making the most of something like this, because if if you've got a bunch of spreadsheets or whiteboards or all this stuff, it's very disorganized, and in many cases you may not even know some of the resources you have out there. So I have to imagine when you're working with somebody on an implementation, there's not a nice clean, hey, we're migrating from this older system to this new system and we have all this information just ready to go in this nice little file, and we'll just upload our XLS sheet into Training Orchestra and presto, we're magically optimized. What does that process look like, and how do you work with customers to help them figure that out? Because if they've been doing Excel spreadsheets and whiteboards for a long time, that's not an overnight transformation.
It can be a little difficult. I think, but fortunately, most of the time they do have some list. They do have some place where they've put a list together. Yeah, you may have to put more than one list together to import it and get the database seeded with that initial data. But it's not that daunting a project. I think it was because they're using Excel, they're going to have a reasonably good idea. Again, maybe several Excel spreadsheets that be pulled together for all of your classrooms or for all of your instructors or for this. But generally, it's not that terrible.
Okay. And so what is easy too is that when a company is moving from one LMS to another, to take this example, or for one technology to another, it can have a certain level of complexity because they put some processes in place. But remember that today the situation is they have those great LMS, but they manage manually instructor-led training. So they are moving from nothing to a technology that helps. And so it's pretty easy. And it can take everything in between 1 week. We always offer a package where the client is live trained in a week. Even for a client with 300,000 employees,
Wow.
it can be deployed in a week. We also have a workshop methodology where it will take something like 2-3 months, by the time to sit together, understand the process. How do you consolidate your budget? How do you want to optimize your resource? And configuring Training Orchestra the way they want. So it's really, it's pretty easy. We're not in a situation where they have a technology and they have to move to Training Orchestra. They move from XLS, and as Pete said, they have the data in XLS, so we can, let's import everything in Training Orchestra, and they'll have it. So it's pretty simple. What do we need? The list of instructor, list of the room, the list of trainer, and then we will optimize everything. So it's not that complex. It can be really done in a week live, even for a very large.
You're on the record, right? 1 week.
No, we're doing it for some very large clients,
and we have a hard time, Stefan.
No, and we always offer.
Yeah.
It's not probably as contextualized and as when we configure the system, It's not the best methodology, but think about it. A small organization or a very short deadline, they really need it. Well, it is what it is. Let's be ready next week. Okay, it's not going to be very sophisticated with 25 different roles, and no, everybody can see everything. Let's go.
Okay.
But immediately you can make the most of our system, and you don't have to invest too much. So it's the same product at the end. So it's pretty easy to deploy.
So some of it is just that process of, right, and I guess we're talking about the implementation process, is sitting down and mapping out that what do you have, what are you looking to do, what type of configuration do you need, and then moving that forward. And I guess one of the important things you brought up, which actually makes sense to me, is to some degree, not to some degree, to a big degree, moving from one platform to another is a lot of times more difficult, even in terms of, I've implemented new tech. You're right. It's easier when there's nothing there because you're starting with a clean slate and you just say, hey, let's build this how we want to build it, and we'll put things in the way we need to put them in, versus, well, we need to decrypt the old system, try and map everything over to the way it was over there. Now we're going to try and translate it and move it over. So I guess I can see how you almost would be able to move faster than if there was something and you were just moving from training symphony to training orchestra.
Absolutely.
Yeah. There are situations. One of the reasons we have the workshop methodology is, there are clients that they may be using Excel spreadsheets and doing a little bit in their LMS, but they have their ideas, their business processes that they've developed, and so through the workshop methodology, we help them. First of all, we want to understand their processes and what their goals are, and then we will help them configure the system, the training orchestra, to really optimize for them to accomplish their business objectives. And so it's a little bit more involved process, but in the end, they're getting amazing value out of the system, and it's a lot more configured, towards their organization.
Okay. So I'd love to just dig a little bit deeper into this, because from a, and I don't know, Stefan, if one of the slides that you had, just from an experience standpoint, what some of that stuff looks like, because I think for me, having seen so many different things, I can easily visualize, okay, yeah, I get operational efficiency, scheduling, coordinating, things like that, and what that may look like. Is there something that we can just take a look at or talk through about how does that really work in terms of that? And while we're doing it, maybe if there's a use case, or Peter, if there's a specific situation that we can talk through or think through of, how do people really leverage the power of this? Because I have to imagine you could have it and still not get the most out of it. And I think it's important to think about how do you maximize the investment of what you have. So I see it here. Let me pull it in and talk me through what we're looking at here.
Yeah, it's a great question, because as it's it's an old need, but it's a new technology. People like usually to picture what is exactly in training orchestra. So as you can see, and just as a use case, I'd like to describe the use case where someone would like to control his investment in real time, would like to make the most of his resource, and would also like to track in real time the investment and secure the training operation. And let me show you, for example, on this dashboard, the fact that you have an immediate visibility over your budget. As you can see on the right side of the screen, I have invested $1.7 million. By the end of my fiscal year, I will be at $2.2 million, and I know in advance that I will respect my budget, which is $2.8 million. That's the green bar. I can also have some alerts with the session that are in danger. It's very important. The session that is in danger is that we have not yet assigned an instructor, and the session is next week. We really need to do it, or we try to double book a resource. It's not possible. And we offer a lot of graphical views, because we're a scheduling system. So the core of the system is to give visibility over your planning. So you see here, for example, that employee life cycle. I have this session happening from the 15th to the 17th of January. It's all green because we have assigned some resources, while this one, UGDPR for corporation, is orange because we miss a Spanish-speaking trainer. He must be proficient on Instructor-Led on this specific subject, but on the top of that, he must speak Spanish. But I can have 200, 500, 1,000, 10,000, 100,000 instructors in the organization. So not easy to find the best available resource. So the system will help me to filter. I can see that I have two options. Alexander clearly is not available. He's doing a new course design, because we can also set up the activity. And I will go with Alberto. Give me 1 second. Alberto works for a training vendor. I would prefer to use someone from my own organization. So let's move this activity, to another day. And now I can very easily assign Alexander to this specific session. And what is great is that even if we're a back office system, we try to make the life very easy for the user. You see, everything is turning green. Now this is in the agenda of Alexander, and I can retrieve automatically the cost of this session of all the resource I have assigned. So very easy. I go in the expenditure, and automatically I cost. So Alexander has a cost per hour is $24, and automatically the system is saying, okay, it's 14 hours, so it's going to be 340 USD. Maybe behind the scene it's Canadian dollar or euro, but as I want to work in USD, I can track in real time my budget, and I don't have anything to do. I just assign the resource, just make the most of my resource, optimize the resource use, and it can be. We give the example before that. It could be difficult to secure all the training operation. What if I forget to send invitation to an instructor? So that's why you have the milestones. So the milestones give you visibility over what you have to do. Did we confirm to the instructor? Oh my God, we let. That's red here. And orange, I have to do it. Green, I'm good. So you can set up the milestone. It's a pilot checklist.
That's what I was going to ask. So I'm going to stop you there. So on these milestone pieces, because this is an important part, right? It brings back all these memories of there's all these steps in the process. And this goes back to, I don't think people always, outside of L&D definitely, and inside of L&D sometimes we don't think about it as an operation, and it is an operation. There's a process we follow. There are milestones, there are dependencies. So with those milestones there, that's something that is configurable so that you can say, hey, this is how we operate, or is that pre-configured?
So boss, you have a library of pre-configured milestones, because we know that most of our clients will send calendar invitation to instructors. So it's great to, batch send 1,000 invitation and everything is turning green. That's what's happening in Training Orchestra. So you have some standard milestones, but if you want to configure your own milestone, you just click on new here, and you can basically create everything, including a new milestones. So we have clients, for example, they will have to fuel an helicopter, so of course they create the specific milestone, and for each session where they need the helicopter, they will have this milestone retrieved automatically.
To make sure that they're not about to kick off, helicopter training and they take off and realize they're on an empty jet. Because that could be catastrophic.
Yes. To secure that, you're right. But it's also because it's a task of someone. Yeah. And someone has to do, okay, what do I have to do? For example, let's say that someone has to, to prepare the room, so I just click on room preparation, and here is my to-do list. I'm in charge of that, of preparing the room. I can zoom, just on one specific task, like instructor confirmation. Okay, you have to confirm instructor for those 3 sessions. So it's more to ease the collaboration. Yeah. And Christopher, it's better if you want to use an helicopter to have enough gas in the helicopter.
It's good if you take off in a helicopter and it's fueled up. I know I prefer my helicopter to always be fueled up before I go anywhere.
Okay, that sounds like an invitation. Sounds like an invitation. We'll join you.
Big, and they're powered by batteries, so I don't really worry about that. But with that, so the other thing that comes to mind is that, going back to my point earlier of not everyone outside of L&D understands the operational nature of things. And I've found in my career, I've spent a good amount of time educating other business leaders and other stakeholders that I interact with what goes into some of the work that we do so that they understand that. Is that something that you could then, do you have clients that then use this to be able to help make the case for, hey, this is what we're doing, or use that to be a little more strategic than reactionary about the work that's being done in L&D? Because to me, I just look at this and go, this helps tell the story of, look at the complexity of what goes into what we do, so that when someone says, hey, can you do a training next week in France? And by the way, we need somebody who speaks, French. It's not just, oh yeah, sure, let me call, Stefan and I'll send him over because I'm sure he's free right now.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah. So you have to rely on experts on that instead of relying on a process or a system. So maybe the expert is in vacation. The one who has the answer is maybe in vacation. So here you have everybody can access immediately to the answer, even if this person is not an expert. So you don't need an expert. You just need someone who is here, who knows his job, and who is able to make the most of the resource. But all the answer will be there. We can be very precise on that, and we can give precise information. And also we can interact. We have also an instructor portal, and so we can interact in real time, and we do a lot of innovation. For example, in the new version, they can self-assign themselves. So they will see, okay, Christopher, you have these skills, and you can speak those languages, and you are in this area. And automatically the system will pre-populate to you a list of potential sessions that you could deliver, you could facilitate, and you could say, oh, okay, I'd like to do this one and this one, and you candidate. So it's so more easy, and it's a better way to engage the instructor instead of giving them a call or sending email. And we are overwhelmed with those calls, those email, and it's better to have this instructor portal. And strategically, you can have visibility over where you are. Maybe I'm sharing that right now. Okay, for Austin, we have 80% of resource use. Like for New York, we have 94% of resource use. Think about it, 94% is maybe too important. Using the resource at 94%, maybe there is a chance of burnout for an instructor, and maybe they are the best instructor. We see that in San Diego, they have plenty of time. So what's happening, why? So you can take better decision, and the system is really here to help you make a good decision.
Okay. So thinking about it really more operationally, and like you said, I mean, those are some key decisions that I saw it, right? I saw trainers burn out. They were on the road too much, and maybe they had a lot of energy to do it in the beginning, but you start losing it over time. And if you don't have oversight to it, I like the fact, one of the things you mentioned, and this is not in it today, but it's something that's close, right? Is the ability for instructors to be able to interact and say, hey, this is something that, these are ones that make sense and match my profile, and I'm going to do that. Is that correct?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
That's exactly that. We should recruit you as the new head of marketing.
There you go.
You describe well.
Okay. Well, yeah. And I think the thing about that is, you were saying me. Yeah. And the reason I think that that's a valuable tool is going back to me reflecting on this. There were times where somebody maybe was available on the books, but they knew they had something they tentatively were doing. And then you'd say, hey, I've got this trip for you, or I need you to be here. And then you were going back and forth of like, well, I can't, now you got to find things, versus empowering them to say, okay, I can figure that out. On that, and I don't know if you can pull this up quickly, but one of the things I'm curious about is, while the end user, the learner, isn't the audience of this, the instructor is kind of your end user. So what we were looking at, what you were sharing before, was the administrative side of, as an administrator, how are you administrating this? As an end user, as an instructor, what's that experience like? We talked earlier about how there's some opportunity to collaborate through the portal. There's some other things that you can do. I'm just curious, what is that like? If I'm an instructor, how do I work with this?
Yeah, that's a great question. And so, yes, we do not connect the learner. And there is a reason why, is that you already have 750 LMS plus great learner engagement platform, and we don't want to compete. This is not our mission. Who need one additional LMS on this very crowded market? Nobody, So what is interesting is to bring value, and nobody is doing what we do. So we really focus on connecting training scheduler, the team in charge of managing the training budget, and the instructor, as you say. And right now, for example, this is the instructor portal. I can see all the tasks that are assigned to me. As an example, sharing the client feedback, send the expenses. Well, it's red. It means I'm late. I can have visibility
over the helicopter. I can't forget that one.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I can see all my session by an helicopter view with, for example, I see that, okay, I have this session to facilitate. I can access to all the logistic details, where it's happening, when does it start. I can access to the library of the last version of the document. You'll tell me it's easy. Yes, absolutely. If you have full-time permanent instructor, it's going to be easy for them to have the last document. But if you have a lot of subject matter experts, external instructor, are we that sure that they have the last version of the document? Is it okay with all the tasks that have to be done? So we see some of the tasks are green, some are red, so it alerts the instructor, and they can also key in some information in order to manage their activity. Right now, I'm connected as a full-time permanent instructor,
Okay.
So in this case, I would say, well, I'm not available. I'm doing a new course design for, I don't know, course XYZ on this particular date. And it's going to be in my agenda. But if I'm a subject matter expert, here, I would be able to self-assign myself. So instead of giving you a call and ask, Christopher, would you be available? You'll see automatically all the sessions that are pre-scheduled,
Okay.
and you can candidate, in one click. And it is really the communication. So the different use cases that we have is that we think about any situation. You have full-time permanent instructor, you have subject matter experts. They can be internal or external subject matter experts. You train employees or extended enterprise. In this case, you want to track, when you train external audience, you want to track not only your cost, your investment, but maybe sometimes you charge back and you want to know if it's profitable. So all those tasks are done in Excel spreadsheet, Outlook. It's a lot of manual operation. And in order to do more and better with less, it deserves a system like Training Orchestra.
Okay. No, that, the last thing, and then I told you we were going to run out of time before we run out of things to talk about. And everybody's always like, I don't know. And I always tell them we do. But the one thing, and then I'll do kind of the 2-minute wrap, is what you mentioned there. And now I completely blanked on it. So I don't remember what I was going to say. It's fine. So let's wrap this up, because we're getting to the top of the hour. And I think for those of you watching, or those of you who may just be catching the end of this, my takeaway from this, my biggest takeaway, and then I'll let you add on to that, is this is less about, right? And I think we need to avoid, just to reiterate, the whole is instructor-led versus digital. I think that just needs to stop, because the reality is, and Pam, if you're still watching, I think your comment was perfect. Learning needs to happen, and there's different techniques at different times. And I think that's a great summary of let's focus less on the this or that and say, what is the right tool for the job? And the reality is, facilitator-led is an important piece, but it's also a very complex and, can be very expensive component. And we don't always necessarily pay as much attention to that operational side of how do we make the most so we can do more and better with less. And just having a chance to see that, I think the operational nature, the ability to bring that together, to organize that, to help you make decisions based on data and real-time stuff, and pull all that together is valuable for those of us who are doing that. And I think there's certainly a place for it. Like you said, it's the ocean. The ocean's not going to dry up, regardless. And so how do we make the most of it? But anything else in the last couple minutes that you would add that maybe I didn't summarize, or that you would want to chime in on?
Just want to say it's an exciting product, and when talking with potential new clients, and when they see the functionality and they talk about their pain points, I mean, there's smiles on their faces when they see that we can take away the pains that they have. So that's from a salesperson standpoint, it's pretty exciting product to be able to talk about and demonstrate.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so also. Oh no, please, Christopher.
No,
and so maybe a question that we frequently have is, the cost of this technology, and of course, the fact that we manage $6 billion of training every year with more than 600 clients in more than 20 countries helps, to invest a lot and to reduce the cost for clients. But it costs, to be transparent, 10% of a learning management system, and the return on investment is big. optimizing the way you use the resource, tracking your budget is something that is really strategic and important. And so we based the business model is based on the number of classes, the number of sessions that you organize. So it's a very affordable technology that you can also deploy pretty fast.
Well, and we talked about this before we came on, and I think we've hinted at it along the way that, right, because of the operational nature of this, there is so much room for waste, right, when you are doing it in these inefficient ways. And so there's a lot of money, a lot of time and money that's being spent on waste, and pinching that tighter can actually do a lot for you. And it's not the fun, exciting front end stuff that I think sometimes we get caught up on, but it really, truly is critical. And I did remember what I was going to say, which is to get the most of it, though, for an organization, I just looked at what you did with like the instructors and putting their things in, right? People have to be using the system. If they're not going in and putting this stuff, right? I mean, that's an operational process that an organization has to prepare for, is to say, hey, this is the system we're using, right? We're putting things in, and that's part of that implementation. So I knew I'd remember. I knew I just at the moment forgot.
Well, a lot of times they're trying to do those, but the same things, but in a less efficient way.
Right.
And this just brings the efficiency.
It brings it together. It's the place that they can do it, and it's from what I saw, it's an easy way to do it. Mm-hmm. Okay, so thank you both, Stefan and Peter, for being here. This was great. Thanks everybody for watching. Hey, if you're doing instructor-led stuff, tag, share, like someone in, because I think there is tremendous value in just thinking differently about these things. And hope you have a great weekend. Thanks for your time, everybody, and I already said it. Have a great weekend. We'll see you next week.
Thank you, Christopher. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks so much, Christopher, for the invitation. Thank you. Bye-bye. Cheers.
Bye-bye.